time existed when the cars on America's roads were not just a way to travel. They became a symbol of an entire era. They were the cars people built memories with, the journeys they took, the moments they shared, and the experiences that stayed with them long after those years had passed. During the 1950s and 1960s, one car slowly found its place in the lives of millions of Americans. It was not famous only because of its beautiful design or its impressive size. It became special because it became a part of everyday life for ordinary people. That car was the Chevrolet Impala. Today, many people see it as a classic automobile from the past. But for those who experienced that era, it was more than just a car. It was a reminder of a time when cars were deeply connected with family, travel, and life's simple moments. But what was so special about the Chevrolet Impala that turned an ordinary automobile into a lasting memory for an entire generation? A time existed when cars on America's roads were more than just a way to travel. They became a reflection of the lives people were building. In the years after World War II, America entered a period of major transformation. New communities were growing, families were moving into new homes, and many people were looking toward a future that promised more comfort, more independence, and new opportunities. During this era, owning a car became an important part of everyday life. A car meant more than simply reaching a destination. It meant having the freedom to travel farther, explore new places, and experience a country that was changing faster than ever before. As highways expanded and cities became more connected, Americans began looking for vehicles that could match this new lifestyle. They wanted cars that offered comfort, space, and reliability, vehicles that could handle daily routines while also making longer journeys more enjoyable. This was the golden age of the full-size American automobile. Large sedans became a major part of the culture, and car companies competed to create vehicles that represented the style and confidence of the time. Chevrolet was already one of the most recognized names among American drivers. The company had built its reputation by creating vehicles that appealed to a wide range of people. Then, in 1958, Chevrolet introduced a new name that would become one of the most remembered in American automotive history: the Chevrolet Impala. When it first appeared, the Impala stood out with its distinctive design, spacious interior, and the presence that many buyers were looking for during that era. But what made the Impala truly important was not just its appearance, it was the way it fit into people's lives. For many owners, a car like the Impala became part of everyday moments, driving to work, visiting family, taking trips, and creating memories along the roads of America. Because the cars people remember the most are not always the ones with the most impressive numbers or the most powerful engines. They are the ones that were there during important moments, the ones that carried people through different stages of life. And the Chevrolet Impala was becoming one of those cars, a vehicle that represented not only a changing America, but also the memories of the people who drove it. But how did this Chevrolet become one of the most recognizable cars of its generation? And why do so many people still remember the Impala decades later? When Chevrolet introduced the Impala in 1958, it arrived at a moment when America was changing rapidly. The country was growing, roads were expanding, and the automobile was becoming a bigger part of everyday life. For many Americans, a car was no longer just something used to reach a destination. It represented freedom, it represented independence, and for many families, it represented a reward for years of hard work and the beginning of new experiences. But the American car market was already crowded. Every major manufacturer was competing to create vehicles that could attract buyers who wanted comfort, style, and reliability. Chevrolet understood that people were not simply looking for transportation. They wanted a car that felt meaningful, a car that could fit into their daily lives, but also feel special when they looked at it sitting outside their home. That was the idea behind the Chevrolet Impala. Introduced as part of Chevrolet's full-size lineup, the Impala quickly stood out with its distinctive design, spacious interior, and confident appearance. During the late 1950s, American cars were known for their bold styling and strong presence on the road. The Impala reflected that era perfectly. It was a vehicle designed to catch attention. But the true success of the Impala was not only because of how it looked, it was because of how it connected with the people who owned it. Inside, the car offered the kind of space and comfort that many drivers wanted during a time when families were traveling more and exploring more of the country. FA's highways expanded and road trips became a bigger part of American culture. Having a comfortable and dependable vehicle became increasingly important. A car like the Impala could become part of everyday routines. It could take someone to work in the morning, carry a family on a longer journey, or simply become a familiar part of life. And during that era, buying a new car was often a memorable moment. For many people, it was not just about owning a vehicle. It was about achieving something. It was a sign that years of effort were paying off. That emotional connection is what helped cars like the Impala become more than just products. They became part of people's personal histories. Over the following years, the Impala continued to grow in popularity. By the 1960s, it had become one of Chevrolet's most recognized models and one of the most familiar full-size cars on American roads. But the reason people still remember the Impala today is not only because of its sales numbers or its design. They remember it because of the moments connected to it, the roads it traveled, the people it carried, and the memories created around it. The Chevrolet Impala arrived during a unique period in American history, a time when cars were becoming deeply connected with freedom, family, and personal achievement. And this was only the beginning, because the biggest part of the Impala's story was not just about how the car was built. It was about how it became a part of everyday American life. The true story of the Chevrolet Impala was never just about the car itself. It was about the moments that happened around it. Because there was a time when owning a car meant something different. A car was not simply something people used and replaced without a second thought. For many families, it represented years of hard work, careful decisions, and the feeling of reaching an important milestone in life. Seeing a new car outside the home was a special moment. It was a sign of progress, a sign that life was moving forward. And once that car became part of a family's daily routine, it slowly became connected with the memories they created along the way. The early morning drives, the visits to relatives, the weekend journeys, the unexpected stops along the road, the conversations that happened while traveling together. These were simple moments, but many of them became the memories people carried for decades. During the 1960s, cars like the Chevrolet Impala were part of a lifestyle where the journey itself mattered. A trip was not only about reaching a destination. It was about the time spent together along the way. For many children growing up during that era, the back seat of a family car was a place where countless hours of childhood passed. They watched the world outside the windows change as roads carried them to new places. For parents, the family car represented responsibility. It was a way to take care of the people they loved, to make everyday life easier, and to create opportunities for experiences that might be remembered for years. And because a car was such an important investment, many owners took pride in looking after it. Keeping a vehicle clean and maintained was not only about appearance. It was about respecting something they had worked hard to own. That connection between people and their cars was something special about that era. A vehicle could become familiar. It could become part of the rhythm of everyday life. People remembered not only the car sitting in the driveway, but the people who sat inside it, the conversations, the laughter, the quiet moments during long drives, the places they visited, and the memories they created without even realizing they were creating them. That is why cars like the Chevrolet Impala are still remembered today, not only because of their design, not only because of their popularity, but because they were present during moments that mattered. They carried people through different chapters of life. They were there when families were growing, when new memories were being created, and when ordinary days slowly became stories worth remembering. The Chevrolet Impala became more than a vehicle on American roads. For many people, it became a reminder of a different time, a time when cars were deeply connected with the lives of the people who owned them. But as the years passed, America began to change. The same country that once loved large, comfortable cars was about to face new challenges, and the future of vehicles like the Impala would never be the same again. But every beautiful era eventually begins to change, and for the Chevrolet Impala, that change came during a time when America itself was changing. For many years, large American cars represented comfort, freedom, and the feeling of being ready for any journey ahead. They were part of everyday life. They were the cars people depended on, the cars that carried families through important moments, and the cars that became familiar faces in neighborhoods across the country. But by the 1970s, the world around them was different. The fuel crisis changed the way many people thought about driving. Suddenly, things that had once made large cars attractive, their size, their power, and their spacious design, were being looked at from a different perspective. People began thinking more about fuel costs, practicality, and what they needed from a vehicle in their everyday lives. For many families, choosing a car was no longer only about comfort or appearance. It became a decision based on changing circumstances. And this was not just a change in the automobile industry. It was a change people could feel in their own lives. A familiar part of everyday life was slowly beginning to change. The large car that once represented a certain time in America was now facing a new reality. But something important remained: the memories. Because even when people started choosing different vehicles, the experiences connected with cars like the Impala did not disappear. The family journeys, the roads traveled, the moments shared inside the car, those memories stayed with the people who experienced them. A vehicle can become older, a design can become outdated, a model can eventually disappear from new car showrooms, but the moments created around it can last much longer. For many people, the Chevrolet Impala represented a chapter of life when things felt different, when families spent more time together on the road, when a long drive could become a story people remembered years later. When a car was not just something parked outside a house, but something connected to the lives happening inside it. The world was moving forward, and the automobile industry was entering a new era. But for the people who had grown up with cars like the Impala, it was not simply the end of a vehicle, it was the end of a certain feeling. A feeling connected with an earlier time. A time when cars were not only machines, they were part of people's memories. And that is why, decades later, the Chevrolet Impala is still remembered, not only as a classic automobile, but as a reminder of the lives, journeys, and moments that happened around it. Today, a Chevrolet Impala from the past may look like just an old car, a classic vehicle from another time. But for the people who lived with cars like these, it was never just a machine, it was a part of their lives. Because some things become special not because of what they are, but because of what happened around them. A car could become connected with important chapters of life, the years when a family was growing, the journeys that brought people closer, the roads that were traveled again and again, the simple moments that seemed ordinary at the time, but became precious memories as the years passed. That is why people still feel a connection with cars like the Chevrolet Impala. They are not only remembering a vehicle, they are remembering a time when a long drive could become a family memory, a time when reaching a destination was only part of the experience, a time when the people sitting inside the car mattered more than the car itself. For many owners, keeping an old Impala alive today is about more than restoring metal, paint, and mechanical parts. It is about preserving a connection to the past, a connection to the people, places, and moments that were once part of everyday life. Because when someone brings an old car back to life, they are not only rebuilding a vehicle, they are bringing back a feeling, the feeling of a different era, the feeling of looking outside the window during a long journey, the feeling of seeing a familiar car waiting outside the home, the feeling of remembering people and moments that can never be replaced. And perhaps that is the real reason why certain cars never disappear from people's memories, not because they were perfect, not because they had the biggest engines or the most impressive designs, but because they were there. They were there during ordinary days that later became extraordinary memories. The Chevrolet Impala was created during a changing time in America. It traveled through different generations. It witnessed families grow, roads change, and lifestyles evolve. But the stories connected with it remained, because a great car is not only measured by how it was built, it is measured by the lives it touched. The Chevrolet Impala was made from steel, glass, and machinery, but the memories created around it, those were made by people. And that is why, decades later, the Impala is remembered not just as a classic automobile, but as a piece of history that people once lived.